Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Board of Supervisors meeting for Calaveras County. At this time, Madam Clerk.
Our closed session agenda, item 1, pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6, personnel matter, conference with labor negotiator Judy Hawkins, Director of Human Resources and Risk Management, regarding Deputy Sheriff's Association, Sheriff's Management Unit, Service Employees International Union, and Calaveras County Public Safety Employees Association negotiation. Go ahead.
Is there any public comment on the closed session item 1? Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
Item 2 is conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation, one case pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D2.
Okay. Any public comment on item number 2 of the closed session agenda? Seeing none, we'll revert to closed session. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Board of Supervisors meeting for Calaveras County. At this time, we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let's begin. I pledge
Welcome. Madam Clerk.
Report of closed session. Item 1, pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6, personnel matter, conference with labor negotiator Judy Hawkins, Director of Human Resources and Risk Management, regarding Deputy Sheriff's Association, Sheriff's Management Unit, Service Employees International Union, and Calaveras County Public Safety Employees Association negotiations. No reportable action was taken. Item 2, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation, one case, pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D2. No reportable action was taken. However, the board may adjourn back into closed session on this item later in today's meeting if the board determines it is necessary. Please note, on Tuesday, October 17th, the board held a closed session on item 2, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation, one case, pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D2. We reported out that no reportable action was taken in the morning and that the board may adjourn back into closed session. That was not necessary, so the initial report out on that closed session item is final.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, announcements.
I do have an announcement. For anybody who is wishing to comment during any portion of the public comments during our meeting today, last week we noticed that people were kind of forming their line in that back row of seats, and I'd really like that you didn't do that. We have enough room for 5 people to stand in the aisle, so not blocking the door and not in that last row, if you wouldn't mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Once again, folks, we'd like to remind everybody, especially during these meetings where we have a large attendance, that the back row is reserved for staff. They'll be coming and going as they are required to appear before the board, and fortunately we need to get those folks back to their offices when we can. So if you would please respect the fact that the back row is reserved for staff. Thank you very much. Madam Clerk.
Public comment. Any item of interest to the public that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board and is not posted on the consent or regular agendas may be addressed during the public comment period. California law prohibits the board from taking action on any matter which is not posted on the agenda unless it is determined to be an emergency by the Board of Supervisors. If public comment is completed before the 30-minute allotted time period, the board may immediately move to the next order of business. If public comment is not completed during the allotted time period, it will be continued as the last item of business in order to provide an opportunity for the remainder of comments to be heard.
Ladies and gentlemen, today is going to be very engaging. And as you see, we have a general session public comment. So everyone's clear, this is a general public comment period. This is a time to bring up any topic that is not on today's agenda. There will be another item-specific public comment period for each item on the regular agenda, and that's per the board chair's discretion. Any items pulled from the consent agenda and the regular agenda will be selected from the public and from the board and from staff at the appropriate time. So if you're here to talk about a topic or an item that's on today's agenda, for instance, we'll talk about the information that we're here for today regarding submitted during last meeting. Please understand that will be the proper time to address that item during that public comment period if the chair allows that period to take place. I now welcome public comments on topics not on today's agenda. Please step forward. Thank you, sir.
Joel Pitto from Paloma. I used to regularly pester this board about the correction of the problems on Gwynn Mine Road. It's an emergency exit for this county, has been needed numerous times, and it's been allowed to sit for most of the year in an unrepaired condition. I find it disgraceful. I find it embarrassing that we pay the guy responsible for this $75 an hour. What a wonderful opportunity for him to show that before the rains come and the road washes out further, that this county can achieve something other than bicker about pot grown. My professor at Berkeley was an expert on the study of lemmings. And after studying them for 30 years in the tundra, he came to the conclusion that nobody knows why they all gather together and run over the cliffs, but they do on a regular basis. I am upset at some of the things that have been happening in this county, and it looks like another case that we're preparing to be lemmings and possibly go over the cliff. And to that I would say, this quote from Berkeley, and that brings me to the second mode of civil disobedience. There's a time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part, and you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, and upon all of the apparatus. You've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all. That doesn't mean, I know it'll be interpreted to mean, unfortunately, by the bigots who run the Examiner, for example, that doesn't mean that you have to break anything. 1,000 people sitting down someplace, not letting anybody, not letting anything happen, can stop any machine, including this machine, and it will stop. Please come to your senses. Do not go over the cliff. It'll just cause chaos to this county. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker.
Good morning. My name's Bill Schmidt. For the next week, before I retire from the real estate business, I am here to do my swan song for you guys. And this board and previous boards have managed to enact legislation over time that's personally cost me about $350,000. Okay, I'm a big boy. I knew, I knew what I was getting into when I started, and I just want to say, I used to show up here all the time when there was a previous planning director who did her best to kill my real estate business, and I'm happy to be here as a survivor. I'm happy to be here as a Calaveras County resident since 1972, although there were a few, I gotta leave, I gotta come back, I gotta leave. It's my third trip back, so. I just, at one point I said, I'm gonna bring 5 empty cans so that you guys could kick them, and a road map so that you could kick them down the road a little further. But there's no need for that. Anyway, I really hope that the Board of Supervisors and the citizens of Calaveras County over the next whatever period of time see it fit to not kill any more businesses like mine, which has basically, next week, I'm shuttering the doors. My competitor and one of my really good friends is going to take over and operate a branch office out of my location. And I'm saddened that there was no economic virtue, but on the other hand, over the last 12 years, decisions made by previous boards gave me some great tax deductions. Great tax deductions. Thank you so much, because, it's I lost $80,000 on that one. Anyway, thank you so much. I wish you all the best, and I wish the county the best. And I got 6 seconds left to say thank you very much, and nice to see all of you again.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker.
Ben Stopper, District 5. Gentlemen, all of you behind there have taken an oath of office to protect Calaveras County, its residents, and there's many factors that this applies to. Today, I would like to submit on public record an email that was sent out. 4 points on this email. 1, board direction was not given to disseminate this email. 2, no evidence or data was given to back up this point of view. 3, the sender of this email violated his oath by putting the county in a position to be sued by another district. 4, I do not believe the sender of this email wrote it. In fact, I dare him to spell cyanobacteria. And at that point, I would like to submit this as all the points I brought up are not on the agenda today. This email, sir, if I may read it.
Oh, your speaking time is going.
Okay. Urgent. Watershed water quality problem. Attention East Bay Mud Board of Directors. In 2006, East Bay Mud Directors established the McComey Watershed Management Plan to achieve its goal of water quality and environmental protection to include managing the McComb watershed in a way that ensures a high-quality water supply and protects natural resources. Today, the McComb watershed, located in Calaveras County that supplies water to 1.4 million, is being
Excuse me,
threatened.
Mr. Stopper, hang on a second here. Counsel, is this an agendized item information? I know we're in a gray area here.
Yeah.
Certainly, the board chair determines the extent, the latitude that you allow public comment. Certainly, we do have an agendized item as it relates to cannabis later on in the agenda. It would be in the board chair's discretion to limit, you've listened to 2 minutes worth of comment, there's 1 minute left. Certainly you can find out to what extent it's not related to the item later versus the letter itself, which is not related to
Mr.
the item
Stopper,
later.
let's understand something.
Yes,
The
sir.
information you're going to be relating in your remaining minute, if that-
I'll keep it short and sweet, sir. I'll
well, as
submit
long
it.
as the content does not apply to an agendized item,
Okay.
okay?
It's submitted.
And I will stop you if it does.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And actually, I think something in the letter does apply.
Your
but
minute,
at the-
sir.
Huh?
It's your speaking time.
That's all right.
Okay.
I'm willing to forego reading this, just the fact that this email is submitted onto public record. My 4 points made that don't apply to the agenda item go along with it. And at this point, it's submitted, and I'm happy for people to hear it later if it's going to be part of the agenda item. But I did not see it within the agenda packet.
Okay. We'll give you the opportunity if it does apply on the agendized item.
To read it?
At that time during public comment if we have it.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you, sir. At this point, I'm going to just leave the rest of these copies here and move on.
Chair, can the rest of the board have the copies?
Madam Clerk, is there enough copies for the board and staff? I understand. Supervisor Mills, do you have a copy? That's right here, sir. Oh, okay. No, yeah, oh, I'm sorry. I was preoccupied. We have enough copies. We have enough copies. Good morning, Bonnie. How are you?
Good morning. Good morning, Board. My name's Bonnie Newman, and I've shared with you that I suffer from dementia, that I've been a bully in my life.
Excuse me, hold on a minute. Folks, we need to give the proper respect and time for our speakers. If you need to have a conversation, I'd appreciate it if you took it outside because the acoustics in this chamber is not the best. We're working on that. Thank you. Bonnie, go ahead, please.
I'd also like to share that I'm a liar, I'm a hypocrite, I'm disrespectful, I'm paranoid, I'm vengeful, I'm envious, I'm slothful, and every seventh sin, deadly sin you can think of, I have in me. Plus, I'm a horse's ass. So I know what I'm talking about now. After the meeting, first day last week, I had to go home. I couldn't take it anymore. I had to get my dictionary and look up 3 words: respect, hypocrisy, and tolerance. Respect is when you have esteem, honor, or regard for another. You show consideration, empathy, or admiration. You make allowances for differences. You can earn respect, but once you break trust, you'll never get it back. Our leader on the board asks for respect just about every meeting. He almost lectures the public on respect. You only get what you give. When people get up and walk out and turn their back and make snide remarks, that doesn't elicit respect. So that moves me into hypocrisy. Saying one thing and doing another. Criticizing something and then doing it. We have a case in point, it would be White House emails. For God's sakes, didn't we learn? Are we stupid? Yes, we're still doing White House private emails. Another hypocrisy, I sat here a couple of weeks ago and listened to a whole bunch of people get up here and talk about their concern of the environment, that toxins, pesticides, herbicides are ruining our environment. These are the same people that wanted an asphalt plant in the middle of a residential district. What hypocrites! Okay, then I went home and I looked. I got a gallon of Roundup at home. I'm a hypocrite too. Finally, I want to talk about tolerance. The ability to overlook, accept, make allowances for differences, to be non-judgmental, freedom from bigotry and prejudice. I'm the most shining example you have of tolerance, because I sit here week after week. You don't see me getting up and saying, liar, hypocrite, you friggin' SOB, shut up and sit down. I don't do that. I'm thinking it, but so far I haven't done it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Bonnie. Good morning.
My name is Kim Fisher Ruthroff, and I am a fifth generation of not only Calaveras County, but also McCollum Hill, my District 2. My children are sixth generation, so as you can see, our roots run very deep. I'm not here to talk budget. I'm not here to talk cannabis. I'm here to discuss the disgraceful behavior of certain board members. Last week, I sat and watched the attitudes, lack of interest, and flat-out rudeness to not only the public comment, but also the members of this board and this county's staff. I was appalled and embarrassed that certain staff members are our county leaders, the leaders that we, the people, have voted into this position. Both my daughters were Miss Calaveras and only 17 years old. They were kids, yet represented this county at a level that certain board members could learn by. Our county has the entire state watching over actions with today's technology. The entire state is watching two clowns disgracefully represent our county. As Montgomery Gentry sings, not that you like songs, this is my town. This is where I was born, it was where I was raised, and where I will be put in the ground. So don't think that you don't have a fight on your hands, because I don't stand alone.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please. Our standing rule is no clapping. Hopefully we can continue that rule today. I'll buy that, but I won't do the clapping. Thank you.
Good
Ms.
morning.
Blake, how are you?
Morning. Marty Crane, District 5. I want to talk about something else. You know that I've spoken before, and every single thing that we do and that we participate in or that happens affects every other thing in this county. Everything is interrelated. Nothing happens in a vacuum, and it's becoming more and more clear. So today I want to talk about Red Cross. Red Cross is not a government agency. It's a gift from the American people. We're a humanitarian organization and one of many partners. Our mission is to prevent and alleviate human suffering, thereby contributing to the maintenance and promotion of human dignity and peace in the world. That's a hell of a mission. We need our volunteers. We need everyone to help us succeed in that mission. We provide relief to victims of disasters and help people and communities prevent, prepare, and respond to emergencies by mobilizing the power of the world's largest humanitarian network and donor dollars. The American Red Cross responds to a home fire every 8 minutes in this country. In Calaveras County, on average, it's every 11 hours we respond to an emergency. They're not always given a big title like Butte Fire, Rim Fire, Ditweiler, or Point Fire. It's one family, total devastation. Their house burnt down in the middle of the night. They're on their own because they don't have that big label and dollars coming to them and resources. However, critical preparedness and activities are constant and ongoing. You may not see them all the time, but they're happening. The fundamental principles it didn't bother anybody, and I forgot that I wanted to use it. I'm getting techie in my age here. The fundamental principles, I wanted to read them to you. Humanity, to prevent and alleviate human suffering. Impartiality, to relieve the suffering of individuals without discriminating as to nationality, race, religious beliefs, class, or political opinions. Neutrality, to enjoy the confidence of all by not taking sides in hostilities or engage in controversies of a political, racial, religious, or ideological nature. Independence, to maintain autonomy from the government. Voluntary service, to provide relief without being prompted in any manner by desire for gain. Unity, to maintain only one Red Cross in any one country. And universality, to ensure that the movement is
Ms. Clary,
worldwide.
thank you very much.
I want to leave this with you.
Okay.
These are cards that can assist people in the
Thank you, Ms.
process
Craig.
to become
Thank
a
you.
Red Cross volunteer. Thank you.
Hello.
Hi, Mike. Sandy Mitrot, D2. Yes, I'm here again. I couldn't let the posturing of last Tuesday go unaddressed. I am, as a full-time resident of Calaveras County, in a word, appalled. Why? Let me tell you. The snipey behavior by Supervisors Mills and Clapp following Supervisor Garamendi's tactful expression of dismay at how a Calaveras constituent was treated by the people elected to consider all input and act on that input to the betterment of the county as a whole was highly unprofessional and, most importantly, immature. How old are you, gentlemen? And I use the term gentlemen quite loosely. Supervisor Mills introduced nothing more than a personal white paper as a study. His white paper regurgitates information easily available on the World Wide Web.
We're on thin ice here, okay?
And if you would like me to cease, Mike, I will, or
Okay,
Supervisor.
just make sure it doesn't apply to the agendized item.
Okay, so the question comes at to how are you spending my money, Supervisor Mills, as an elected official? Lastly, I appeared before the Planning Commission on July 13th in regards to cannabis registration 26.864, a commercial grow inside my residential HOA. A multitude of violations were found when code enforcement visited and the site was denied. The registrant appealed, yet never showed. I voiced concerns over this site and the cultivator, as did others, but my most concerning point was related to the registrant having cultivated since 2003 on a Tier 3 slope, a major concern of the Regional Water Quality Control Board. Supervisor Mills was in attendance and indicated he wanted to talk to me. I met him in the lobby and I asked him to document what departments and agencies would be involved in to ensure proper abatement. He indicated he would make sure the environmental concern was a priority even though the site was not in his district. I documented the information he requested and emailed it to him. I proceeded to follow up
Excuse me a
twice.
minute. Ma'am, do you have a point of order? Yes. Then you have to state point of order. What's your point of order? Ma'am, you're going to have to come to the microphone for us and state your point of order, okay?
My point is this not about the agenda that supposedly is going to be discussed today?
As long as it doesn't discuss the content of the information that was provided.
Well, I was
This is a procedural thing with a personal contact she had. It's not the contact of,
Oh, sorry.
thank you. It's not the content of the information provided at the meeting. This is an incident that is separate from that, but not the content. So your point of order is out of order, and we'll continue. Thank you.
Okay, but the subject matter is about the environmental. It's the subject matter that she's talking about, so
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you.
I followed up twice via email and once via voicemail. I received no response, nothing. So what exactly was Supervisor Mills trying to do that day? What was his motive in approaching me? Why have I yet to receive a response more than 3 months later? In closing, the behavior I have recently seen breeds distrust. It perpetuates alienation. It, more importantly, hinders people's desire to engage in their community and in their government. Grow up, Supervisor Mills. Act like the professional you repeatedly claim to be. Work to make Calaveras County a place to be proud of through action and deed. If you can't do that, then I suggest you step down from your position. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson? Morning.
Good morning, Board, and Mr. Clapp and Mr. Mills. I was very disappointed last week, along with many, many, many people in this county, at your actions. I'm sorry. You're disgraceful. You really are. You can't even lie to the reporter. She was out of tune. We had to get up and leave so we could discuss my, what was it? Before the PPRC. Really, during public comment, you have to get up and discuss a court case? Outside. Other members of this audience got up and turned their backs. Personally, this morning, I'd like to get up and sing, "Oh Lord, won't you buy me a Mercedes-Benz?" But then Mr. Clapp and Mr. Mills won't leave for me. Darn. Anyway, good example. Great, just great personal fortitude in you two. Thank you three for respecting the rights of the individuals of this county.
Thank you. Good morning.
Rick McMillan, District 1, and I want to know how many more times you're going to raise our taxes if we don't use Measure C. Retired people, yeah, we can't afford another tax rate.
Okay, thank you. Good morning.
Hi. What is the difference of leaving the room or using your technological thing to ignore what a speaker has to say, which happened to me last meeting? I don't think there's any difference if you leave the room or you're not paying attention. Look past the wrinkles and the bulges. See beyond your own prejudices of me. Think of me as an unconceived child. My spirit and soul float through the biosphere. I must go where fate leads me. There's a couple who lovingly hold hands. Their greatest desire is to have a child. My hope is that I will go to them. Instead, there is a woman whose body has been ravaged by drugs and men. In recent days, she's had sex with an unknown amount of men, maybe 10. The number is not important. My biological father will remain unknown to me. The drugs, or maybe the chemicals in them, will doom me to have no limbs, or maybe my organs, like liver and spleen, will float outside my body inside my mother's womb. It is unknown what my future holds for me. Maybe abortion, or a future doomed by men's avaricious greed. Or wait, back up. Maybe I'll be born seemingly whole, but there is something missing in my brain and soul. My mother, in her addictive state, entices me to partake in her drug of choice. The cycle starts again, my life doomed to a doper's den. People are stacked up like dominoes. When one is removed, they all fall down. Poisons put yearly in the ground and leached into our water, which pregnant mothers drink. Lives sitting on the edge waiting for their green gold to come in. When the truth comes out, the crop is used to fill up and poison our dump, and later be sumped into the groundwater for millions to drink. Faster than our eyes can blink, the future of untold people to be conceived is hanging in the brink. You may think that you are answering to your constituency as you ignore 5,200 signatures who represent how many children as well? In the end, your sacred constituency are to be yet to be conceived. You and all of us owe them, as we owe those in the past who have sacrificed wealth and fortunes and their very lives to give us a better world. It is my belief that the federal government would be willing to help us eradicate this scourge if we would be willing to truly ban marijuana across the board, including
Now,
dispensaries.
ma'am, we've crossed that line. Thank you. I'm sorry, Chair. Madam Clerk, what was that?
Our 30-minute time period is done.
It's over? Okay. We'll continue after the regular agenda meeting, folks. Madam Clerk?
Consent agenda. Consent agenda items are expected to be routine and non-controversial. They will be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. Any board member, staff member, or interested party may request removal of an item from the consent agenda for later discussion.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, is there any member of the public in attendance that wishes to pull any consent agenda item? You'll have to stand and identify yourself, please. Who pulled? Number 5?
Bonnie Newman, number 5.
Thank you. Any other member of the public? Seeing none, any member of the board or any staff member wish to pull any consent agenda item?
I wanted to pull 8 briefly for a clarification, just to provide update on a form that the system made
Okay,
an error
Item
on.
8?
Yes.
CO Lutz, item 8.
Number 4,
Number 4, Supervisor Clapp. Any other item by the board or staff? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to accept the balance of the consent agenda.
I will move the balance.
Moved by Supervisor Toffenelli,
second.
second by Supervisor Mills. No further public comment on this issue. I'll bring it back to the board. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed indicate by saying no. Motion carries 5-0, unanimous. Madam Clerk.
Okay. Item 4 is from the Auditor Controller. Adopt an ordinance by a unanimous vote establishing qualifications for the Office of the Auditor Controller and amending Ordinance 526, Section 2, 1969.
Good morning, Ms. Callen. How are you?
Good.
This
Supervisor.
item was pulled by Supervisor Clapp. Supervisor Clapp, would you like to address the issue?
I want my 8 years.
Your 8 years.
So I guess my question to Supervisor Clapp, in your example, you had said that to be a master carpenter, correct? You would have to do an internship of up to 8 years,
Yes.
correct? Okay. So we're talking about that you would want to see someone be a master carpenter for 8 years, in your example. You would want to see someone be a master of accountancy for 8 years in order to meet the qualifications here.
That's correct.
Okay.
So they would have to have potentially 20 years of experience before they would meet the qualifications here.
I think the board has made a decision regarding this item.
It has to
It
be
was-
unanimous though. So
Ms.
what
Callen, please. The board has made a decision. This was actually on a prior meeting, and that's been voted on. This is the second reading of that. Am I correct?
This is essentially, yes, the second reading, it's the adoption of this ordinance. However, one thing that I would like to clarify, going back, what I had previously indicated at the introduction was the general rules as it relates to ordinance adoption, which requires a simple majority. However, when a statute recognizes something more stringent or requires additional requirements for adoption, you have to apply those more stringent rules. The government code does actually provide that a unanimous vote of the board, so all 5 board members has to approve or essentially adopt an ordinance in order for it to be approved.
Okay.
That is pursuant to 26946 of the government code, and that is a requirement. So although it could be introduced by less than a unanimous vote, it would have to be adopted by a unanimous vote.
All right. Thank you, counsel. I'm sorry, Ms. Callen, you can continue.
And so I just want to reiterate, non-unanimous. So Supervisor Clapp, if you voted against this, then basically you're saying there are no qualifications for office. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands that. By not adopting this, that would be no qualifications for office.
I understand what you're saying.
Further comments by,
So
Further
your son,
comments
for
by-
instance, could run for auditor controller. Your,
I didn't
your
come here to
mother
argue.
could.
all
I
right,
made my
folks, we're not going to have a one-on-one conversation. Do you have further, Ms. Callen?
No.
Okay. Supervisor Clapp, do you have any further? Any further comment by staff or by board? Supervisor Garamendi?
I just want to make sure I understand. Supervisor Clapp doesn't want to have any qualifications for this office unless they've got 8 years, which is an arbitrary number pulled out for a different trade than what
Yes.
you're doing. And if we don't approve this, then anybody is qualified to audit our books and control the funds of this county.
Correct.
That's correct, Ms. Callen?
That is correct. And-
Further
and-
comments? Further, just, I'm
And
sorry.
the only other thing is, I will not be running for office next year. So it will not be me.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Chair, I have a question.
Supervisor Mills?
Thank you. Ms. Callen, on a CPA, to get that degree, how many years? That's usually about a 4-year degree, isn't it?
Normally, the normal role would be that you would go through your bachelorette degree. You would get a
Right.
degree in accounting or of some similar field. You would generally get an entry-level job with an accountancy firm. I can't remember how many hours it is, but in order to do it, you're probably looking at 2 years of qualifying to even sit for the CPA exam. And then after that, the qualifications here specifically say senior fiscal management, not just experience in accounting, and in order to get to a senior fiscal management level, that's not entry level, that's not right out of college, that's not even after you've gained your CPA. There's lots of CPAs out there that just got their certification. They're still in an entry level capacity. So we're talking about someone who has years of experience in order to meet the qualifications for this.
I just want to be sure that whatever the decision is made by the board, that there is sufficiency within these requirements to handle a position, and I think you agree with that.
Yes, I do.
And that if the 5 years of a person who has served in a senior capacity is sufficient, it might be more sufficient than someone who just completed a certification.
I have
And
actually
so-
found that, yes.
Yeah, that's part of what I'm trying to get to is that it isn't so much the time served in a classroom, but time served in the
field.
physical work
Yeah.
that's required.
Yep.
And that we could leave ourselves, I think as Supervisor Garamendi has stated, open to a myriad of qualifications which might not be sufficient to handle the job that is being required.
Yep.
Okay.
Supervisor Clapp?
From my understanding, a person that has a CPA license right now can qualify with no time at all, it's just the license. We're talking about a person that's qualifying just from their experience in the profession.
Well, your argument is just you would feel better to have no qualifications than any qualifications. It's either or. It's fish or chicken at a restaurant. I mean, you don't get beef. So you're either no qualifications or only the ones that you want. And you know, the issue is, you know, you've got 4 board members that agreed to this. We're all looking for the most highest qualifications that we can possibly venture to get, and what's reasonable. And I don't think your analogy that a craftsman carpenter is going to require the same number of years in order to have these fundamental experiences for accountancy.
Supervisor Tofinelli? your lights on?
Supervisor Clapp, in order to possibly get you to change your mind, you hold a contractor's license, is that correct?
That's correct.
I also hold a contractor's license. In order to qualify for the test for this license to hold it, you need a minimum of 5 years experience. I suggest, based on that versus the 8 years, in order to be a iron worker, full-fledged iron worker, you only need 4 years of an apprenticeship program to qualify for that. I understand there's testing that goes along, 2 days testing that goes along with this license. And the fact that you have to have, in order to meet the qualifications, signatures from either an engineer or an architect or another contractor verifying that you have that experience. I think that is kind of spelled out in what's being said here. So you met your trade by the 5 years. I met my trade by having the 5 years. I think in order to go forward with this, at least have some qualifications. You would at least consider that in your vote.
Well, when you took your tests, the rules are a little bit different than when I think I took mine. I took mine in the early 70s. When I took mine, you had to have 4 years journeyman experience, which required 4 years apprentice before you got that, and you actually had to be signed off by your union on that too. So I don't know what the requirements are at this point. But I would be willing to kick this down to the next meeting, and where I'd have more time to think about it, maybe talk to Rebecca and other people. But right now, I'd be hard pressed to support it. But I would, if they would pull it and send it to the next meeting, I would talk to you more at that point.
And we're running out of time. So the other thing is these qualifications have to be in force within so many days of the filing period, and the filing period opens up December 29th, something like that. So we're running out of meetings, we're running out of time. I think what's frustrating to me is that you do not hold education as any level of experience. And, you know, for someone to get a CPA, generally they've already gone through, and honestly, I have a son in college, and there's no way he's going to get out in 4 years. So we're looking at 5+ years of education, plus at least 2 years of actually working on the job in order to qualify for a CPA, plus 5 years of experience if they can get to that fiscal management perspective after that. So we're talking about, best case scenario, 12 years of experience. And you're arguing over 5 years of fiscal management experience needs to be 8. I don't think you're giving merit to the fact that there are education requirements prior to that. There are entry-level requirements on top of that. There is hours and hours of reviewed work and audit information that has to go into that in order to qualify for your CPA. I'm baffled that this is this difficult of a decision.
Would a shorter answer be to ask my colleague here to accept what we have here now, and so that we can get this into the election cycle. If the board wants to go back and review it and make it more stringent, that we could do that next year.
And you can change
And-
this anytime. The board has the authority to change it, rescind it at any moment.
That's my point,
Yeah.
is that rather than put us in a precarious position of not having qualifications, this gives us at least that foundational element. And then if we want to come back next year and have a robust discussion about maybe making them stricter or changing them, we do that. But don't put us in a risk of allowing just anyone to file for this position.
Correct.
Supervisor Toffenelli?
Well, my question was, if we do make any changes today to this at the second reading, would it have to go back around? Yes. So we'd have to go through the whole course again, which could be 3 weeks from now before it would come back for a second.
If there is a substantive change today, it would have to go back it would have to come back at a future date for adoption, yes.
We're talking more than 3 weeks, we're talking 3 meetings down before it would be approved, which could be in the middle of November with the meetings we have left.
It would have to be published one time between now and it coming back.
It would not make the cycle of the 29th, more than likely.
And keep in mind, it does not go into effect until 30 days after it's
30 days.
approved.
Yeah, 30 days.
Supervisor Clapp, you had a comment?
I'll go along with what Dennis' recommendation was.
Okay. Ms. Callen, do you have any further?
No, I appreciate that. Thank you for the compromise.
I'll open this to public comment. I see we have a couple of folks standing in the back.
I was actually standing for the next item, but I do have something to say. Have you heard of the term cutting off your nose to spite your face?
Okay, ma'am,
Sometimes
I'm going to give you
people-
your time. Okay. We had a
Pardon?
clock malfunction. You can start your time again.
Okay.
All right.
Sometimes people do things without thinking of the ramifications, just because they can. So I take second thought on obstructing, because we've seen a lot of obstruction, all levels of government. We're not accomplishing anything. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Mike Falvey, District 2.
Morning.
I can't understand how a person would allow a personal or personality or whatever it is, conflict to enter into a discussion that affects the well-being of this entire county. Someone's sticking a 2x4 in the spokes here. I'm going to run for assessor. Maybe I can win. And boy, I'll tell you what, man, I could spend that money. That'd be a lot of fun. If any one person on this board is taking a personal stance over the well-being of this county, boy, I'll tell you what, that's not happening with me. And also the fact that personal public comment is a time when any one person can stand up in front of the board and plead a case on any one subject. And I'm looking right now at 4 supervisors that are watching me. Now, whether the 5th one is watching me on television, I don't know. If he's going over his notes, it's very rude. Personal comment is supposed to be listened to by at least 5 people, maybe 8. But at least 5, not 4.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker. Good morning.
Good morning, and I will do my usual disclaimer. Supervisor Mills has no idea what is going to come out of my mouth, nor is he responsible for anything that does come out of my mouth. My name is Vicki Mills. I have been in accounting most of my adult life, including some teenage years. From what Rebecca read for the qualifications, I think are over and beyond getting a good auditor. She has given you extra qualifications. By doing the senior position and making sure that they have had that for the 5 years, I know I have worked with several CPAs that have been CPAs for decades. And I have worked with some senior people. And I'll tell you, you couldn't ask for a more stringent, better qualification than what Rebecca has put together. That will get you the best person and the most qualified person to do that job. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker. Good morning.
Good morning. Candy Struby, District 5. My son is a CPA. Took him 5 years to get through college. He worked for PwC for 3 years, did his CPA at that time. He's 32 years old, now is a senior accountant. And to think that someone could apply for this position with no experience is ridiculous.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good morning, Supervisors. Al Segala, Taxpayer Association. We concur with Rebecca and are saddened in her lack of desire to continue. She gets better and better every month, and now she's the very best, I think, our association thinks we've ever had for auditor controller. And then for her to want to leave, I think we might want to consider what we've done wrong that had caused her to leave, and then correct that. Is it such that the stress put on her because of the decisions that the board has made caused her just to decide that her life, her happiness in life is better pursued elsewhere? But in any case, even though she said that she does not intend to run again for another term, I think we ought to encourage her to change her mind, because we have a good auditor controller and we'd like to keep her. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning,
How are
Rebecca
you doing,
Turner,
Rebecca?
Registrar of Voters. I just wanted to let everybody know the filing period actually is December 14th. New law has made the petition in lieu filing period earlier than it has been before, so Rebecca was correct. I originally did give her December 28th, however, legislation has changed that. So petition in lieu filing period is December 14th. However, the candidate filing period for actually filing for the qualification of office is in February. So technically there is a little bit of time. I don't like to push it because these are people's, people are looking into this office right now, now that Rebecca has announced not filing. So I think the sooner they know whether or not they're qualified, the better chances we have of having better qualified candidates, so they're not making last minute rash decisions. However, I question the ability to make it more stringent than the government code, period. I've been speaking with my peers statewide, and it is questionable whether we can make it stricter. And I know Megan's looking into that, and she obviously knows more about it than I do. However, I don't like being put into the position where I am making stricter qualifications, and then I find out after telling people that they're not qualified, they technically could have been qualified. So I don't like being in that position of questioning whether or not what we're doing is actually legal for us to do. So that's where I stand. I think we should keep them as government code. I don't know. I polled other counties, and I don't know that other counties actually have anything more stringent than what government code sets out now.
Thank you, Ms. Turner. Any further public comments? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board. Any further deliberation by the board? Supervisor Clapp.
I believe government code required 3 years, and we add to the 5 years. So from what I understand, what Rebecca's saying, that we might be doing that, so I'm asking county council to chime in on that.
There's certainly question. My office has been looking into it. Generally speaking, jurisdictions have the ability to make local laws more restrictive than state law. However, when the legislature makes code or statute, when they essentially consume the entire field, local jurisdictions lack the ability to make things more restrictive. There are concerns that because of the way this statute was written, that the legislature did in fact intend to consume the entire regulatory field as it relates to the qualifications for this position. I have talked with my colleagues. We have been looking into it. There is no other jurisdiction that communicated with me other than one that did something other than what the government code provided. And they adopted the government code provision precisely as it is written. And they did that for a reason. So all of the other jurisdictions in the in the state have the 3 years and not the 5 years. The one jurisdiction that has something different did not communicate with me, but that is what they have on the books, is something that is the last provision under D. They do not have a time frame at all.
Thank you.
Sheriff, I couldn't make it over here in time to do public comment. I was over there.
Mr. Edson, I'm going to allow public comment.
It was fast. All right, thank you.
I'd like to finish my conversation with Megan first.
Okay, could you hold on a minute,
Yeah, I'll
please,
wait.
Mr. Edson?
Yeah.
Supervisor Clapp.
So there is a part of council, in an abundance of caution, the most conservative approach would be for the board to follow the government code as it expressly states. And that would be something that my office would recommend. There is more of a risk to increase the qualifications. And if this board chooses to take that risk, you can certainly do that. However, as I've previously indicated, the safest and most prudent approach would be to follow the government code as it's stated.
Could we, at this point, do that, considering that we had a vote last week to add the 5? Could we reverse it back to exactly the way the state recommended?
In an abundance of caution, what I would recommend is that we agendize it for the next, that we can publish as a summary and bring it back at the very next board meeting. I do believe we have a special board meeting on November 5th, 6th? Okay, then the 14th. In doing that, it would be adoption on the 14th, so it would be effective December 14th, which would be the deadline or the opening date for people to start submitting their applications. Obviously, that once it's adopted, there is that 30-day window, so people at least know that it's coming and they can anticipate it, unless for some unforeseen reason there's a referendum on that decision.
Okay.
My position would be just to send it back and adopt it just exactly how the state put it out, because all the numbers we're coming up with is just arbitrary. I mean, it's just my reason and everyone else. So
I think what we might do or might consider is complete public comment and then bring it back and poll the board to bring it back to the 14th meeting, providing we can get this, number one, on the agenda and meet the December 14th filing opening date that County Clerk Turner brought up.
And I would just clarify, it would not be a poll, it would actually be a vote. So essentially, this would be a modification to the introduction that was done at the last meeting to modify it back to the originally proposed language that is consistent with the government code, and then we can move forward from there.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you, Council. Supervisor Clapp. Go ahead, Mr. Edson.
Thank you.
3 minutes.
Cliff Edson, San Andreas. You guys looks like you're heading in the right direction there, so I actually agree with you for once. you know, you can price yourself right out of people to want to hold these offices. It's not an easy job. It's a tough job. And we have, in my opinion, read the requirements. They're fine. They were fine before. I think that they just need to be followed. That's all. You will not get a CPA to come in here and do this job. They'll have to take a cut in pay. Big cut. So it's not going to happen. So, you know, get some good qualified people. You have great guidelines and requirements. Looks like the rest of the state follows suit with that. Seems to me that's a no-brainer. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. If it's a point of order, you have to announce it.
Point of information.
Can't do that unless you come to the mic during public comment, ma'am. Public comment, I'm going to allow you to come up. I allowed Mr. Edson. I know it's closed, but
Sorry. Well, no, it's not a comment. I have a question. What is the government code that we're speaking of today on this issue? 26945.
945.
Through 26946. 26946. Thank you.
You're welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be closing public comment now. Ms. Callan, do you have any further as staff? I think she does.
So I just want to, so I'm on the same page. So are we just going to republish with the 3 years? So they'll republish with the 3 years. We'll bring it back on the next meeting for adoption.
Correct.
Okay, so that's on the 5th.
If the board votes in that direction.
That's on the 14th.
You have to have a vote on it.
So we're bringing it back on the 5th.
No, on the 14th.
I was informed that the 5th meeting is a special meeting only for cannabis-related appeals. Certainly, if the board were to choose to open it to a full special meeting to include things other than cannabis, it could be done on that date. However, the next regular meeting is on November 14th.
Okay. And then the filing period opens on December 14th? Okay, and this has to be in effect 30 days prior to the filing period, or no?
I believe it needs to be in effect before the actual, so the petition in lieu filing period, which is when everybody goes and collects their signatures for petition in lieu in lieu of a filing fee. The actual filing period for the office begins in February. So I do think we have time to have those qualifications in place prior to the actual filing of nomination papers.
Thank you, Ms. Turner. Ms. Callan, anything else?
Okay, so we're just going to republish it with the updated information, and it's going to come back on the meeting on the 14th. Okay, on consent. Okay.
I'd entertain a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Moved by Supervisor Mills,
Second.
second by Supervisor Clapp. Public comment has been held. Call for the vote. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed indicate by saying no. Hearing none, motion carries 5-0 unanimous. Thank you, Ms. Keller.
Thank you.
Chair, do we want to take a break before?
Let me take a look at this.
There's two more here.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be taking a 15-minute break for staff. They've been here since 7 o'clock. We'll be back in 15 minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Madam Clerk.
Item 5 is from the Public Works Department to authorize the Director of Public Works to execute an agreement with Paint Care Incorporated for the collection, transportation, reuse, recycling, and disposal of paint using environmentally sound management practices for the period of September 1, 2017 through August 31st, 2018, which may result in nominal revenue requiring approval by the Board of Supervisors per Section 3.28.034 of County Code.
Madam?
I had a few questions, and Diane answered most of them, but I see as Jeff's here. I understand that this is the third method of handling paint that we've tried. The first one was, I believe, when the landfill just opened and there was bins and barrels of paint that people would dump in, and then I'm not sure if we got to get paint back free or we had to give $1 a gallon, but the paint was made available, and it was all usually gray or beige or something, everything mixed together, that it was available to the public. Now I understand that although this is going to be saving the county $20,000, and there's the option of this collection agency buying paint from us in unused cans. Is there a way for the public to buy back the paint that these guys are taking that we might be able to put on fences or sheds or something that doesn't matter what color?
Thank you. Mr. Clovis? Or, there we go.
I thought I heard two people wanting to pull this item. Was there someone else?
No, only takes one.
Okay, great. Yes, this item is essentially to establish a contract with Paint Care. When we collect the paints and thinners and all other forms of household hazardous chemicals, we'll take the latex paint and we'll bulk it into 55-gallon drums. And then Paint Care will come and pick up that paint, they'll take it and relabel it and sell it or donate it. So places where it can be purchased is places like Habitat for Humanity, where you can buy a 5-gallon bucket of recycled latex paint for not very much money. So it could be useful for your fence boards. I will warn you that the latex paint won't last as long as you'd hope it to, though, Ms. Newman. So yes, the public can buy it back, and basically, this is just a method of us getting a company that will come and pick up our 55-gallon drums when they're full and then recycle this household hazardous waste. Any questions on it?
Mr. Clovis, is there a contact name, number? Who would somebody contact to purchase that buyback paint?
I would start by calling Rock Creek and leaving a message with a telephone number, and they'll call you back on that,
Okay.
the landfill. And that is 785-1689.
Thank you, sir. Further comments by the public on this? Any questions of Mr. Clovis by staff or the board? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move this item, Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Tofinelli moves. Second. Supervisor Mills indicating by a hand motion. Public comment's been handled. Bring it back to the board for a vote. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed indicate by saying no. Motion carries 5-0 unanimous. Madam Clerk.
Item 8 is from the Administrative Office to authorize the County Administrative Officer to execute a 4-year lease agreement with Jake and Donna Copeland for office space located at 700 Mountain Ranch Road, Suite C2, San Andreas, California, for a cost not to exceed $265,000 for the period of August 1st, 2017 through July 31st, 2021.
Thank you. CEO Lutz.
Yes, I pulled this item just for a clarification point. I realize in the packet that was distributed online, starting on page 41, there were 2 pages in that packet, 42 and 44, that were garbled. And when I went back and pulled it and we looked at it, what we found is when it was duplex, because it was put through a duplex scanner, what you're seeing on page 42 and 44 are the back side of a document that it was just picking up the text. So there was nothing that was missing from the document. There are copies for the public should someone want it, and each of the board members has a copy of the correct agreement, which was stated here, with just 2 extra pages that inadvertently got picking up the back side of a page and thinking that it was valid when in fact it was just the back of a page that bled through.
Okay. Supervisor Garamendi.
Thank you. Just a really quick question. I don't want to make a big deal of this, but why do we list as a increase the San Francisco Bay Area cost of living, and then we come down here and we say the cost of living should not exceed 2% in 12 months? And why are we using the Bay Area? And then second, how do these two things correspond?
Typically, when we're doing lease agreements, and it depends on the landlord, they might want to tie it to some type of an inflator. In this case, that was what they requested. I think from our perspective, again, wanting to recognize that although we're tying it to some type of an inflator, we wouldn't expect nor want to be seeing more than a 2% increase. So we asked for our terms to be included in there to basically cap it, no more than. But if it's between that 2%, say it grows the 1.5% based on that index, it'll grow the 1.5%.
Thank you.
Further questions of CAO Lutz by staff? Supervisor Mills by board?
Yes, thank you. How many square feet are we talking about here? I'm sorry, I didn't send you an email asking that question in advance. You normally
3,500 square feet.
Yeah, normally I ask those kind of questions in emails. Thank you.
Okay, further questions? Seeing none, public comment? Mr. Segala.
Al Segala, Taxpayer Association. This is a very good lease. There's a provision for up to 2% cost of living adjustments in each 4-year stretch, up to 3 of those. So, but there's also a provision that any further leasing would continue at the last year's rate. It would kind of, if the market is not there, then there would probably need to be a modification, at least at that time, to make it fair to both parties. It might be better at the end of each 4-year period to simply have the lease rate subject to renegotiation. And that would bring it to whatever the market was in our area at that time. And that is more mutually beneficial than by locking into cost of living beyond the 4 years.
Thank you, sir. Further public comment? Bring it back to the board for deliberation. Staff? Any comments by staff or by the board? Seeing none, entertain a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Supervisor Garamendi,
Second.
second by Supervisor Toffenelli. Public comment's been held. Call for the vote. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed indicate by saying no. Motion carries 5-0, unanimous. Madam Clerk, when you're ready.
Item 14 on the regular agenda is from the Assessor's Office to adopt the resolution authorizing the Board Chair to sign the application for open space subvention payment of $140,527.96 from the State of California under the Open Space Subvention Act.
Good morning, Ms. Davis. How are you?
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Leslie Davis, County Assessor. This is an annual action by the county that requires the board's approval for the chair to sign the open space subvention report. It looks like there are a lot of dollars involved, but the reality is the state has not budgeted funds for this subvention since 2008. So there's really no money involved, even though that's what we're asking for.
So that 140,000 doesn't exist then,
Yeah,
right?
it's all on paper.
It's all on paper.
And we owe them $313,000, but since they haven't paid us close to $800,000, I would hope that it's a wash sometime soon.
Numbers don't work that way. Thank you very much. Is there any further discussion with Ms. Davis by board or staff? Seeing none, we'll open to public comment. Any public comment regarding this item? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board and call for a motion. And do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Supervisor Garamendi. Second?
Second.
Second by Supervisor Toffenelli. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed indicate by saying no. Hearing none, motion carries 5-0, unanimous. Madam Clerk.
Item 15 is from the Board of Supervisors to select one member of the Board of Supervisors to act as the 2018 CSAC, or California State Association of Counties representative, and one member to act as the alternate for the CSAC Association for the year beginning November 28, 2017. So just as a note, we do this assignment at this time of year so that our county is represented at the state conference that's held next month.
And I understand CSAC did change their bylaws where we have to provide a nominee and their approval. Is that correct?
I believe so.
Okay.
So our current representative, just for the public, is Supervisor Oliveira is our current representative, and Supervisor Garamendi is our alternate.
It's a great vote of support. I'm going to mow next time your name comes up.
I would entertain any public comment on this issue.
Not on Gary's.
Al Segala,
Mr. Segala.
Al Segala Taxpayer Association. This kind of ties into the last item we had. This bullshit the state is doing. This would be if we can make sure whoever we send to CSAC has the courage to bring this issue up and approach the state and also our state representatives, get that stuff cleaned up. Why continue information that's meaningless? And anyway, that could be a consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Segala, and we'll find a different term for it. That. Mr. Fry.
Good morning, Chairman and members of the Board of Supervisors. George Fry. I'd like to make a recommendation that Supervisor Garamendi be that representative for 2018.
Thank you, Mr. Fry. Ma'am?
I would like to see someone appointed that doesn't kiss politicians' asses.
Ma'am, I didn't hear you. I'm sorry, what was that? I didn't hear what you said. I'm sorry.
You want me to say it again?
I missed it totally. A moment. Ma'am, that was out of order. I'm sorry. That was out of order. Thank you.
I believe that it's appropriate.
Ms. Crane.
So Marty Crane, District 5. I appreciate that, for the most part, we are trying to be respectful and encouraging. And if our two nominees for this position, CSAC, is that what we're talking about?
That's correct.
Is Supervisors Tofinelli and Supervisors Garamendi, I feel confident we will be well represented. And so just know we're counting on you. And we'll be watching.
Mr. Stopper.
I don't need to be rinsing my mouth out with any soap today, so I'll keep it clean. Sirs, CSAC's next, coming up very soon, and representation should be that of the people, and we should consider the people there that are going there should have an upstanding image, being willing to listen to everybody that's willing to provide information to them and represent Calaveras in a very upstanding and formal manner. And, you know, I could concur with what Marty Crane's assessment on who might be good representation to that point. Thank you.
Thank you. Further public comment?
Sandy Mydrat, District 2. I would also reiterate that I would be fully supportive of Supervisor Garamendi and Supervisor Tofinelli being our representatives at CSAC this year. They exhibit a level of professionalism that would represent our county effectively, and I would appreciate if you would consider that. Thank you.
Further public comment? It's okay.
Vicki Ranke, Angels Camp. I guess if we're up here recommending people to sit on CSAC, I would like to recommend that Dennis Mills be our representative. He's done an excellent job in District 4, and I think he is a very professional person, and so that would be my recommendation. Thank you.
Okay. Further public comment? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to staff, bring it back to the board. Any comments by board?
Yeah, I would recommend Dennis, and then our backup would be Gary.
I would like to nominate Mike Olivera. I think he's done a good job the last couple of years to be our CSAC representative.
Is there a motion for the nominations?
Before we go in that direction, I appreciate what everybody has said in offering that I be the representative, but I just don't have the time with the other committees that I'm on already. They already conflict with some of CSAC activities. I wasn't able to go even to RCRC a couple weeks ago because it conflicted with a lot of the committees I am. I serve on a lot of committees right now. And adding that onto it, I appreciate what you said and everybody's their comments, but adding that onto it, I don't see how I could effectively represent the county and meet all the meetings that they have, and having to be in Sacramento, have to be in Mariposa, have to be in Alpine County, and so forth. It's just almost physically impossible for me to take on at this time another committee because of what I'm tied to. Perhaps after January, going into the following year when it comes up, if I'm relieved of some of the committees that I'm on now, would free up some time to be able to do that in the future. But right now, I just can't see myself fitting the time schedule in. So, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Supervisor Tofinelli. As I understand it, we have two nominations, one by Supervisor Clapp for Supervisor Mills. We have a nomination by Supervisor Garamendi for myself, Supervisor Olivera. Council, to proceed with the vote on this, do we do it separately or do we do it as one particular item vote by naming the supervisor that the supervisors would vote for?
Well, it would depend on how the motion was crafted. You can certainly do it all in one vote. And I believe the IQM2 program only allows for one item or one vote per agenda item for the electronic program. So if it would make things easier for the clerk to have one motion, one vote that encompassed both the representative and the alternative, but you certainly don't have to. You can do them separately if that's what the board and the chair would prefer.
I see the clerk is nodding her head, so we can do one vote? Two votes?
So I think that what you could do is what County Council stated, was that you can consider the nomination or each of the nominations for the representative. So you could take a motion and a second. You have a motion for Supervisor Mills as the representative and Supervisor Toffenelli as the alternate. You also have a nomination for Supervisor Oliveira as the representative with no other person named as the alternate. So you can do a number of things. If you'd like to consider the first nomination, which is Supervisor Mills and Supervisor Toffenelli, or just Supervisor Mills, you can do that if it's modified to just be Supervisor Mills, and if that passes or fails, then you could consider the next one, correct?
Chair, I'd like to put some input into this.
Supervisor Mills.
Thank you. And I agree with Supervisor Toffenelli that there is a lot of committees that we sit on, and we're all over the place. It really is something that maybe I would like to see is make this appointment, whatever it is, to get us through till we reassign our committees the spring of next year. And then at that point, maybe take another look at who might be the representative. We then fulfill the requirements of CSAC without putting ourselves through undue hardship. If you have been comfortable in handling this particular committee over this last year, maybe that's the best answer, and then we can take another look at it come January, February, when we do our committee assignments as to who is most available.
Appreciate that, Mr. Mills. Also, to fulfill the nomination, currently Supervisor Garamendi is the alternate for CSAC, which has been serving this year, his first term. I would like to continue as the representative for the next year and agree and concur with Supervisor Mills that we make that decision for next year, seeing it's going to be a pretty important year. So with that, do I have a motion regarding the nomination of Supervisor Mills and who was your vice chair selection? Supervisor Clapp?
Well, if we're going to consider this in spring, right now you and Jack are on it, why don't we just keep it that way? Okay. And we're going to change it in spring, so let's just keep it the way it is.
Would you withdraw your nomination then?
Yes, I will.
Okay.
We still have another nomination on the table.
Well, I just wanted to make a motion that we remain the same with the Representative Oliveira and the alternate Garamendi.
Second?
I would second that.
Moved by Supervisor Toffenelli, seconded by Supervisor Mills.
We had another motion.
Oh, we had another motion on the board.
Supervisor Garamendi would need to withdraw his.
Correct.
I withdraw my motion.
I'm sorry.
Now you can make your motion.
Now I would make the motion. I would make the motion that we stay the same with Oliveira and Mills. Oliveira being the representative, and Mills being the alternate.
Garamendi.
Garamendi being the alternate.
And we have name tags, too.
They're out there.
Sit next to the guy for 10 months.
Counsel, I know you want to say something. I'm going to give you the opportunity.
Okay, I move that Supervisor Oliveira remain as our representative and Supervisor Garamendi remain as the alternate for CSAC.
And that's would come back in the spring for us to review.
That's fine.
And I would second that.
I just wanted to note for the record, one, I believe that this appointment is for the entire year. I know that we choose assignments, I believe, in January, not in later in the spring. I do not know if there's anything in the CSAC bylaws that would preclude the county from changing the representation in the middle of the year. That is not something that I or Mr. Lutz have reviewed. It's never come up, and the county has never done it in the past. So certainly, we can look into that and report back when you choose assignments in January. But for all intents and purposes, when an appointment is made, it's for the entire term, which would be through the calendar year.
Well, here's the point is that we're in October right now. So if, for instance, someone is in a 2018 election cycle and loses the election but appointed to CSAC, what do? So that has to be something that's fit into their bylaws.
Well, just for clarification purposes, the terms are through December of 2018. which would be the finishing term of this, or alternatively, if any vacancy occurs in any of your assignments, then the board would have to follow the procedures to fill the vacancy at any point that the vacancy occurs.
Okay. Understood. Supervisor Clapp? Okay. We have a motion on the table. Public comment's been held. I'll call for the vote. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed indicate by saying no.
I'm sorry, I would appreciate if you'd state for the record the motion and who made the second.
Okay.
Thank you.
Supervisor Tofinelli, would you restate your motion, please?
No.
I'll attempt if I can remember, gray hair and everything. I would nominate Supervisor Oliveira to remain as our representative and Supervisor Garamendi to remain as the alternate. And we will revisit it come January. And we will hear what the county council has to say at that time concerning this.
Understand the motion, Supervisor Mills, Supervisor Clapp?
If that's a second, I'll second it, but
Okay.
do we need to go through the vote
Moved
again?
by Supervisor Tofinelli, seconded by Supervisor Mills. We've had public comment. I'll call for the vote one more time. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed indicate by saying no. Motion carries 5-0 unanimous.
I think we were killing time.
Trying to get the lunch, is
Okay.
that it?
Madam Clerk.
Item 16 is from the Planning Department to conduct a public hearing to adopt an ordinance rescinding Chapter 17.95 and replacing it with a new Chapter 17.95 banning or regulating cannabis cultivation and related commercial activities, certify the environmental impact report.
Ladies and gentlemen, just so we can get some gauging of time here, we're going to be taking a lunch break at 12 o'clock. We will be coming back at 1:30. We will proceed with this agenda item with a report by staff as to the content of the item. And the decision of public comment is reserved for the board chair. Public comment on a prior reading, if you will, or hearing was held and closed. The hearing was not closed. It is my decision as chair to reopen public comment based on the information presented by staff. And we're going to be very focused on just that information, dealing with what's presented by staff and how it applies to this agenda item. Do I make myself clear? Is there any confusion out there? We're going to be very focused on keeping this thing on track. Okay, County Council, do you have any comments regarding that procedure? Supervisor Garamendi, do you wish to speak?
Oh, no, sorry.
Folks?
Oh, sorry.
Good morning, staff. Thank you for taking the time to come back again. You may proceed.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Peter Maurer, Planning Director. Just a brief recap. On Tuesday the 17th, we presented the item. There was quite a bit of staff comment from a number of different departments. Then we opened public comment, and that took us till the end of the day. We recessed the meeting to the following day, in which we had closed public comment and then began deliberations at the board. Supervisor Mills presented a document as part of his deliberation, and at that point in time there was a little bit of confusion amongst everyone what to do with that. We discussed it and decided the best thing to do would be to continue to today, giving the public, you, the board, and staff a chance to review that, particularly in the context of how that information might or might not affect the environmental impact report. Gary Jacobs and Chris Munhank from Ascent reviewed the document and prepared a review of that, and I would like at this point to turn it over to Gary to go over, highlight that review of that document. Great.
Thank you, Peter. Gary Jacobs with Ascent Environmental. So the purpose of CEQA, and I'm saying this to give the context of our review, is to provide objective analysis of information and present that information to the public and to decision makers so that an informed decision can be made. And this is a test that we always put ourselves through. Are we being objective? Are we reporting the information that we're seeing as we see it? And we learn things too. And I will say that in our process of preparing this environmental impact report, we have certainly learned an awful lot about cannabis cultivation and its effects on the environment. It was in this context that we evaluated the report that was prepared by Supervisor Mills and an organization known as the Communications Institute. The study, Cultivating Disaster, the Effect of Cannabis Cultivation on the Environment of Calaveras County, was handed out by Supervisor Mills at the October 18 hearing. The date of the study was October 17, and because it was made available at the 18th hearing, we asked for time to review the study and determine its applicability, as well as whether or not the content of the environmental impact report was accurate with the context of that report. We completed a review of the study. It included statements and information on both the public health effects and environmental effects of cannabis cultivation use. A discussion of effects on public health focused on pesticides used on cannabis and how they could affect marijuana users. But because CEQA requires that we focus on the potential effects of projects on the environment, in this case either regulating or banning cannabis grows, the health effects of cannabis consumption is not within the scope of our analysis. However, we do note that the study focused on the use of certain pesticides that would not be legal for use under the proposed Calaveras County Cannabis Ordinance or other regulations governing regulated cultivation that may be adopted by the county. This is a general theme of our review. The supervisor's study accurately describes the potential and real adverse effects on the environment of unregulated, illegal cannabis cultivation. As the study points out, lack of controls on pesticides, fertilizers, grading, etc., has been shown to pollute waterways and kill wildlife, including endangered species in other areas of California. This has been well documented on illegal grows in Humboldt County, for instance, and this is stated in the study. As we state in our memorandum reviewing the study, this is not dissimilar to adverse effects on the environment that previously resulted from standard agricultural practices in the past. And this has resulted in regulation of agriculture, such as requiring grading permits for vineyards in Napa and Sonoma counties to address runoff that was contaminating downstream waterways. And it also includes the State Water Board's irrigated land regulations designed to reduce flow of agricultural chemicals into the state's waterways. The flow of these chemicals in the past has affected our fisheries and has contributed to the crash of the Delta ecosystem. This is serious stuff. Regulations have been adopted for this, including the banning of certain pesticides from agricultural use in irrigation. Best management practices have been imposed since 2003 to, again, try to control the adverse effects of just standard agriculture on our environment. This information informed and was used in the EIR for the proposed cannabis cultivation ordinance. For instance, the ordinance requires compliance with Regional Water Quality Board Order R5-215-0113, which was adopted in 2015 to provide regulatory requirements to protect water quality and biological resources in association with cannabis cultivation. The order requires both permitting and annual monitoring and reporting. We outline the requirements of this order in several places of the environmental impact report, but in summary, the order requires surveys and mitigation of impacts to sensitive biological resources, requires permits that control for and ensure no net loss of wetland resources, requires grading controls and use of best management practices through permits that control erosion. The order includes detailed instructions that must be followed in order to receive a permit. The order also includes the types of pesticides and ingredients in pesticides that can be used for cannabis grows. This list includes pesticides whose residue tolerance limits are exempt from regulation because they are presumed safe for human consumption and are registered for broad enough use, such as unconsumable agricultural products. So these are all parts of the regulatory structure that are in the proposed cannabis ordinance that we evaluated in the environmental impact report. The study that was handed out last week did not address whether the controls in the proposed ordinance or in the Regional Water Quality Control Board regulations would address the environmental impacts of illegal grows, and it appears to conflate illegal grows with legal grows. Consequently, the study does not address potential impacts associated with compliance of proposed regulations on the environment. The study also addressed parts of several reports on the adverse environmental effects of cannabis growth. Most were prepared before adoption of, and none reflect the environmental effects of or that are reduced by the regional board order and subsequently a state board order that was just passed last week. In fact, 2 of the studies recommend policy options aimed at regulating cannabis grows as a means to address environmental impacts. Those policy options were not summarized in the study.
Could I ask you to speak into the microphone, please? We're having comments that you can't be heard.
Okay.
Thanks.
With regard to the statement that indoor grows are exempt from water quality controls per a new statewide water board order, this is not entirely accurate. Under the new state order, there are conditional exemptions for indoor cultivation and cultivation sites that disturb less than 2,000 square feet. However, such operations would still be required to attain a waiver pursuant to the general order requirements and implement all applicable requirements in Attachment A of the cannabis policy. This is the same restriction on chemicals that I cited with the regional board order. So the same chemicals could not be used in irrigation of indoor grows. In summary, we found that the supervisor's study to be an accurate reflection of the many potential and real environmental impacts of illegal cannabis cultivation in California, including Calaveras County. We conclude, however, that the study does not address the effects of regulated cannabis cultivation under the proposed ordinance, and the conclusions of the EIR are considered accurate. Thank you.
Questions by the board of our consultant? Report out? No questions? Supervisor Toffenelli.
How much time did you spend reviewing that report?
Between myself and Mr. Munhank, we probably spent 2 full days going back and forth on what the report said, how it related to the environmental impact report.
Are you going to bill the county for that amount of time?
Yes.
Thank you.
Further questions regarding the report out? Further questions of any staff member by the board? Further staff comments? Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be opening this up to public comment, and I want to make sure that everybody understands that is to be focused on the reporting information just provided during this hearing. You'll have 3 minutes. Madam Clerk, you can start our time. And I want to remind everyone, especially folks in the next chamber, if you desire to speak, I'm going to request that you come and stand in front of the door, no more than 5 people at one time. Because when I say, and unfortunately, that public comment is closed, it's going to be closed. So please be prepared to make public comment during your 3 minutes. Go ahead, sir.
Good morning, everyone. Prapana Randall Smith, District 3, representing Magic Show LLC. I just wanted to address the comments in this so-called report regarding the indoor cultivating and the allegation, the false allegation that indoor cultivators typically dump chemicals that end up in our golf courses and so forth. And just to illustrate the point that I've made many times, that for every problem, there is a solution. And if you're a problem solver, you'll find the solutions. And what I've just shared with you is a receipt for my business, Magic Show LLC, and I want to stress that we are an environmentally conscious business. We are trying all kinds of experiments to reduce impact, such as using LEDs. We recycle our water. All of our water from our AC goes back into the system. We really don't use a lot of water. And when we are at the end of a run, we do get rid of our water. We have it hauled away by Sweet Pea. We don't dump it anywhere. It goes to a proper facility where it's treated, and it goes back into the system. So I thought I'd just share with you this receipt of our latest water removal. It's standard practice. We don't dump stuff into the environment. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker. Hello.
I'm Mark Moore with District 4, and I have read the environmental study which was commissioned by Supervisor Mills, and I sincerely want to thank Supervisor Mills for finally bringing this forward. Like Supervisor Mills, I'm very concerned with the environment. I too was wondering how cannabis farming was going to impact our land, water, and our air long term. But now, after reading the report, it is very clear to me. Interestingly enough, this report is the most compelling argument for pro-regulation and anti-ban that I have ever read. The meat of the report is in the first 29 pages. And in those pages, chemicals, fertilizers, pesticides, and other poisons, those are quotes, were mentioned almost 100 times. And the reference to illegal growers as being a direct cause and effect to the overall problem is emphasized exclusively. To the contrary, the report strongly implies that legal and law-abiding cannabis cultivation, which is no chemicals, no degrading of the environment, hence responsible farming activities in general, was equated to any other type of acceptable crop and its minimal impact on the environment. The report is very clear. It is the irresponsible activities of the illegal violators who have caused damage and will continue to cause greater damage if not eradicated. The sheriff has previously testified that if a ban is imposed, it will absolutely not rid us of those illegal growers. They will remain undeterred while the legal, environmentally responsible growers will be disbanded. And the sheriff will have no better results in ridding our county of these criminals than we have had for the past several decades. Why not? Because there'll be no money and no staffing for that. And don't be fooled. All the outside help that Supervisor Mills insists that we need to eradicate the violators after a ban is in place is pure fairy tale. The cavalry is not coming, folks. The money dries up and we're back to ground zero. You know who wants a ban more so than anybody else? The illegal pot growers want it. What regulation will bring us is a thoughtful ordinance addressing precisely what is expected of growers, including disallowing harmful poisons and categorical destruction. It'll bring us state money to enhance our law enforcement in order to eradicate those violators. It'll bring us tax dollars to not only assist with eradication and cleanup where necessary, but also will help balance our county's budget. If you ban, everyone loses.
Thank you, sir.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Mr. Patron, when you're using your phone over there, you're using it right in the sun, and it's reflecting all around, and it's very difficult trying to focus on the speaker when it's all, thank you, just to be aware of it.
Mr. Wilson, District 1. Board, you'll be receiving a little packet. I hope there's enough there. Sorry if there isn't. I looked up the consulting firm, the Institute, or the Communications Institute. Seems that they only have a LinkedIn page, and they don't have a website that's active from that LinkedIn page. Also, seems that Mr. John Cox is the person who is receiving money. Again, most non-commercial type websites are a .org, not a .com. Seems a little strange that Mr. Mills would pick a .com, which is a for-profit website. Also, Silent Poison used to be a death metal website about a year ago. I thought that was kind of cute. We go from death metal to the environmental hazards of illegal, very, very, very illegal cannabis cultivation. I don't know. I just, Mr. Mills, every time we see this, we look through this thing, it's the illegal growers. We've been standing here with the rest of you for 10 months now, as you've been playing around with the ban for no reason, none whatsoever. Have you ever come to the table, worked with the growers, asked them, said, what can we do? How can we get these regulations that we had under the UO better? How can we make them follow the rules and regulations that the state has laid down? I believe there's a provision in, used to be 64, I think it's 94 now, that with a ban, we don't get any environmental help from the state. I know the feds aren't going to come and help us, but we do get environmental help from the Water Quality Control Board if we're regulated. We also get inspected. We also pay taxes. We also do not use pesticides on our crop. Never have, never will. So we're not polluting anything. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Sarah Levinson, District 2. I'm a registered nurse. I advocate for my patient safety, and today my patient would be our county. And I did read Supervisor Mills' documents, and it clearly shows that the abuse of our county will be coming from illegal grows. And I looked at the photos in this document. Those illegal grows are right around my home. And if there's no regulation in place, the water quality of my pure well is going to be destroyed. The children that everyone talks so much about will be harmed because the safety of our county is at risk. Our law enforcement won't have the funding it needs because the regulated grows actually pay their taxes and fund this. Our Sheriff DeBasilio pointed out very nicely, I thought, where he said it only takes a few years. He's got to have a good handle on the illegal grows that are in this document. They'll be eradicated in just a few years. And if we don't actually read very carefully the implication of illegal grows on our county, then we're going to be putting our sheriff's department back another 3 years, because if I don't want to get into the ban since that's not what we're commenting about, but we all know it comes down to regulation. If you choose not to regulate, then we're going to be set back close to probably a decade. And everyone in this county that are really responsible, non-pollutants, organic farmers will be moving to a neighboring county that can't wait to have the money that they're going to pay for it. And what our county is going to be left with is destruction, pollution. Our children's safety will absolutely be a detriment to this society. It's going to be a huge problem because they're not going to be able to eradicate the grows that are clearly in this document. So I just urge everyone to actually reread this before you do any type of voting and see that this is what's happening to our county if you don't go with strict regulation. Sheriff DeVastilio has a good handle on it, and he'll have an even better handle on it once he has the money. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Tuno.
Good morning. It's David Tuno, District 5. It's been a few days since I've read, I'll call it the Mills Report, and just now read this one. So my memory of the other report might be a little bit hazy, and it can be filled in later by Mr. Mills, hopefully. But a couple of comments on this one here. On page 2, full paragraph 2, various incidences have been referred to as anecdotal information as contained within the Mills Report, so-called Mills Report. And I'm wondering how many such events have to happen before they're no longer considered anecdotal. Those of us who have lived in the county for the last couple of years don't refer to them as anecdotal anymore because the volume is so high, just for your information. That would be maybe it's inside information that you just don't have. But also, and this, again, I'm going by memory, the problems that are relayed in the Mills Report are from, correct me if I'm wrong, counties that have regulation. Humboldt County, for example. So there's a county with regulation and nevertheless huge environmental problems. So it's not anecdotal. It's telling us, it's teaching us that the history of counties that have the regulation have a mixture of permitted grows and unpermitted grows, but even within the permitted grows, you've still got problems. Or how do you separate the two? So the information is that even with regulation, you're going to have these problems unless you consider the entire experience of Humboldt County anecdotal. The way to characterize the regulation, the effects of regulation, then become theoretical. Theoretically, if you have regulation, you won't have these problems because theoretically, you'll go around to every site often enough and everybody will be in compliance because of fear of fines or what have you, or there's so much manpower to do all of this that the regulations become absolute cure. And we know that that's not true. We're not the point of the spear here. We are able to look at the experiences of other counties. Unless we say they did it completely wrong, we will do it completely right.
Thank you, Mr. Torrance.
We have to think of it that way. Thank you very much.
Sir.
My name is Sam Pfeffer. I'm a District 2 registered and licensed farmer. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me today. I don't generally speak at these meetings, and in the interest of brevity, I'll leave my general point aside. But the specific point pertains to the report that was issued at the end of the last Board of Supervisors meeting. I want to note that the report features an aerial shot of my property and my pond with a caption and context that implies I've polluted my pond and it now has algae in it. I want to take this opportunity to point out that A, my fully approved and compliant garden was signed off on by Natural Investigations, the Water Quality Control Board, Fish and Game, Code Compliance, the Sheriff's Department, and many others in what was a surprisingly long and rigorous inspection process. And B, not only does my organic garden comply to the highest standard of prevention for runoff and other ecological hazards, but it's positioned in a way that makes it physically impossible for runoff to get to that water body, which incidentally we swim in. It is also worth noting that the vegetation in the photo is duckweed and lily pads, not algae. I went today and took some more photos to document that fact. As this photo was used without my permission, and it grossly misrepresents the situation in an unflattering light, I want to take the opportunity this public comment affords to officially register that I do not appreciate the defaming use of images of my compliant garden, and more importantly, perhaps to question what other misleading photographs or evidence may have been presented in this as something other than they actually are. And in the interest of brevity, I won't go on to repeat the arguments that you folks have heard many times about regulation versus ban. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good morning. Trent Fiorino, District 1. Probably a lot of you don't know that I used to be a semi-professional magician, was considered quite good at it. Still do a little bit, but I won't be doing any magic tricks for you today. But I'm quite familiar with misdirection, because that's what we used when we did magic tricks. And this whole discussion of legal versus illegal in these reports is misdirection, because regulation is self-regulation, and self-regulation is not regulation at all. Has no teeth to it. We heard from our county stuff that they haven't even got back to recheck on some of these that are approved. If you're not checking on them, how do we know they're not polluting? There's no requirement that they're having outside test agencies come in and test their water, their soil, like we do with other agricultural products, like dairies and wineries, because I used to do that testing myself. I'd have to go on, collect it, because you did not allow them to do their own collecting, and there was good reason for that. The reason you didn't allow them to collect their own samples and send it in for testing is because they don't know if you're switching the samples or what they're actually putting into the sample. That's not being done in this county. We call it regulation, it's not regulation. So how do we know without, I'm wondering, have our supervisors, have you gone out and have you visited any of these grows? Have you taken the time to actually see if they're doing what they say they're doing? Yeah, they can come up and tell you they're organic, they're this and that. First of all, there is no organic regulation for marijuana. It doesn't exist. So for them to keep saying they're organic growers, that means nothing. It doesn't exist. So I just want to say, self-regulation is not regulation. A ban is a form of regulation. It's the strictest form of regulation. Puts us back to allowing people to grow their own personal stash for their own personal use, and that's really, I think, the best regulation we can look at in this county. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Mr. Segala?
Good morning again. Al Segala, speaking for myself, and I belong to several groups, and none of those groups endorse anything I'm saying. There's some good points that were raised. One is, why isn't there any testing? Why is there no testing? How long has this controversy been going on? It's years. How come environmental health, we're paying a lot of money for those people to be here. Why can't we give them a test tube and go to the creek and test the water and see if there's any pollution going on? Why not? That's a good question. I think the first thing we want to know is how much pollution is really occurring. Not somebody's opinion, but what's really happening. The second point is that according to the agricultural commissioner who's responsible for testing the new applicants for the registered grows, he said there was no concern or very little concern about pollution. And my understanding of organic growing is you don't use pesticides. Organic does have a meaning, and when somebody's growing things organically, they don't have pesticides, they don't use pesticides, because that's part of the reason for organic. Use natural things. Also, the black market is not created by the growers. Black market is always created by government, not just marijuana. Anything that the government bans, of which there's a demand for, creates a black market. Government creates the black market. Government creates the black market. Okay, if we want more black market, create more ban. We have a partial ban now, which is the emergency ordinance, which is supposed to not allow new growers to come into the county. Is that working in that way? Is that ban working? I think the answer is no. The best way for harmony in the future and for our public safety and for the environment is to have reasonable regulations and have periodic review or inspections. Doesn't that make sense? Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good morning again. It looks like the Mills report kind of backfired a little bit. That it really did show the major need for good, strong, strict regulations. Appreciate that. Thank you. However, the intention that it was brought to the table, I really kind of have a problem with that. The intention was to deceive, knowing that it was false, knowing they were using false and misleading information. Your intention was to deceive the public, the county. That's wrong. We're supposed to trust our government, our local government. We're supposed to have a lot of respect for them. And I do. I thank each and every one of you for stepping up and for serving. I trust almost every one of you up there completely to do the right thing for our county. What I have a problem with is one of you intentionally trying to deceive the public with false, misleading information. Please don't do that. And I'm saying please. But it's up to you. It's on you. Step up and do the right thing. Don't try to deceive us anymore. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good morning. My name is Raymond Smith with Valley Springs. I'm also the lobbying director with Calaveras Normal. I would like to bring up the report. In the bibliography, there was a report from Stanford University which mentioned another report from the Journal of Bioscience. In that report, it was using facts from 2009, 2010, stating that California's market was only worth $980 million. I question that information because today there's information from insurance.california.gov. The Insurance Commissioner of California held public hearings just this month on the hearing insurance gaps for cannabis so that they could join the insurance company and educate them from the cannabis industry and really get the insurance industry up to date with the needs that they have moving forward with regulation and licensure. Today, the estimated market is $6 billion, and the estimated projection is 20 to 25 billion a year in the coming years. The next 5 years is it intended to rise 20 to 25 billion a year from our current $6 billion. And this had to do particularly with the amount of revenue that the state was getting for enforcement. So that number from 980 million jumped up to 6 billion just within the last, I'd say, 7 or 8 years. And using that information to promote some sort of a ban, I think it actually promotes a regulation. But it's misleading and deceptive actually to use that to push a ban, because it promotes regulation. I think the Mills report actually is somewhat supportive of its goal, its primary objective, which was mitigating environmental damage. There's also 4 key points in that report from the University of Stanford University with the Bioscience Journal. A, the environmental harm caused by marijuana cultivation merits direct policy response. B, current approaches to governing the environmental effects are inadequate. And C, neglecting discussion of environmental impacts of cultivation when shaping future marijuana use and possession policies represents a missed opportunity to reduce, regulate, and mitigate environmental harm. Thank you very much, and I do appreciate your dedication to this county. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, Brock Estes from Valley Springs. We've heard from good people on both sides. We've heard from a gentleman who supports a ban, who says that all regulation is self-regulation. He's probably correct. And we've heard from good growers who tell us that they do self-regulate. I'm really happy that Supervisor Mills was able to get this meeting continued to today and produce environmental questions for us for our consideration, because that really is the most important part of this whole issue. Now, will a ban make us environmentally safer, or will regulation make us environmentally safer? That's the question to decide, and I'm not sure that anyone can say with certainty that either one will make us environmentally safer. So the question is, how do we make ourselves environmentally safer? And I'm going to suggest again that you all go home and Google Montgomery County, Maryland, alcohol prohibition. You'll find what happened 100 years ago in a similar situation where people were afraid, so they enacted local control of an industry that they were afraid of. And that continues to this day. If you want to buy alcohol in Maryland, in Montgomery County, Maryland, you have to go to a state store. There's 21 in the county. They employ 300 people. They put $30 million in the general fund. We could enact something.
I'm going to ask you to focus on
I'm
the report.
focusing on how can we best control the environmental damage being done by the bad people, the people who aren't at these meetings. Because they're out there. We know they're out there. And they're the biggest problem that we have. So what is going to help that better, a ban or regulation? And I suggest that a kind of regulation where the public could be satisfied that the county had full control over everything that was going on in any aspect of the cannabis industry. Not good growers and bad growing self-regulating, and not a ban that simply says, no, we won't have any of it, but total county control as they do with alcohol in Montgomery County, Maryland. Google it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker.
Good morning, Katrine Lambie, West Point. I'd just like to make a couple of observations. First, I was really dismayed to hear the young man just a little while ago talk about the use without his permission of pictures of his land and along with it, false information about it. That really bothers me. I wonder what else in this report has been used in this way. Second, we are looking at the environmental consequences of marijuana growing in a void. What about the consequences of timber industry in our county? What about the grape industry? All of a sudden, we are very, very concerned about measuring environmental impacts. Are we doing this? Are we trusting that Sierra Pacific is self-regulating and doing a good job of it? I have questions about that. I think we should look at all the potential polluters in our county, not isolating especially marijuana. Also, I find that it seems like the assumption is that all cannabis growers are people to be distrusted, people to not be trusted, people who are incapable of being moral, and people with integrity. And I resent that. I think this is a real lack of respect. It's a blanket. It's a blanket statement about people who don't deserve it. So I hope that you consider these points. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good morning. Megan Zalvez, Rolling Hills Bookkeeping. I'm here to read into the record a letter my attorney submitted to you all yesterday. I didn't know if you'd all have time to read it and review the report, so I thought I would read it to you. This letter is submitted in response to the Cultivating Disaster Report presented by Supervisor Mills on October 18th. As an initial matter, it is highly unusual for a supervisor or any agent of the county to submit a 61-page report on a hearing item at the hearing, given the public no time to consider its merits. This tactic is more often used by unscrupulous project opponents and is considered a, quote, bad faith tactic by California courts in SECO litigation. It is unclear why this report was provided at such a late date. It appears to have been finalized days or even weeks before the 18th, other than to deny the public a chance to review. Our experts had very little time to review and respond to the report. Nonetheless, WRA Inc. prepared a truncated peer review attached as Attachment A. As discussed in WR peer review, the report is extremely misleading in that it catalogs the environmental damage caused by illegal, unregulated cannabis cultivation, but then uses that as justification for prohibiting legal, regulated cannabis cultivation. The report mistakenly or purposely with the intent to mislead assumes that illegal and regulated cultivation have the same exact impacts. The report also includes numerous errors and omissions and cites sources that are completely inapplicable to the current situation. Some of these are discussed in the WR peer review. However, there was not enough time to give the report thorough review it deserved due to the limited time provided. The conclusion of the report makes absolutely no sense. Paraphrase as follows, quote, illegal cannabis farms create tremendous environmental damage, therefore the county should make them illegal. These unregulated farms are already illegal. The report provides no support for its conclusion that banning regulated farms will eradicate illegal cannabis cultivation. Further, the report provides no support for its assumption that permitted regulated farms have the same impact as illegal grows. This assumption is false, since illegal farms use toxic chemicals, release hazardous materials into waterways, and harm important habitat without any oversight. Conversely, regulated cannabis farms will receive close oversight from the Regional Water Quality Control Board, California Department of Fish and Wildlife, and the county. Regulated cannabis farms should have impacts similar to any other agriculture use, and in the case of Calaveras County, would provide the funding necessary to wipe out the illegal farms. While the conclusion of the report makes no sense, we agree that the report stands that illegal grows are harmful to the environment. To that end, most of the text of the report actually supports regulation, since regulation would provide funding to eradicate illegal farms and would greatly reduce the incentive to grow cannabis illegally. I'll leave the rest to you to review, gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next speaker.
Sandy Mitra, District 2. Many of the points brought to light by Supervisor Mills via his white paper are essentially supported and addressed within the existing EIR report. The issues are such that the state of California needs to address them through their Regional Water Quality Control Organization, as well as the CalCanna Group headed by Lori Ajax. It's bigger than Calaveras County. Rather than banning and forcing registered and currently tracked cultivators to go underground, which we know many will do, along with those cultivating today unregistered who will continue, why not address these white paper issues at the state level? Would that not be more effective and productive? Furthermore, a more regulated industry here in Calaveras County brings forth revenue that would otherwise be lost. Revenue our Sheriff's Department sorely needs, revenue we can use to staff other critical departmental resources. To Supervisor Tofanelli's point, thank you, Supervisor Mills, for increasing our EIR consultant costs. And to Supervisor Mills, I ask you directly, why would you put forth this report when ignoring a known registrant, again, 2016864, who submitted their application as a Tier 1 when they were proven by the Central Valley Regional Water Quality Control Board to be a Tier 3. We have a known environmental issue at this grow site. I have articulated why, but apparently you voice concerns, yet fail to act on them unless they conform to your own agenda. This behavior tends to dilute the points Supervisor Mills attempted to make in the 9th hour. I would ask that the rest of you not be fooled. Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I I see that we have a representative here from CCWD, and I'm going to continue public comment, but out of respect for prior commitments, I would ask that the general manager of CCWD, with your permission, ma'am, because you are due to speak next, if he could have a 3-minute so he can get back to the office, but it's totally your choice. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I know this is an incredibly difficult issue, policy issue on many different fronts, and I just here on behalf of the district, just to speak solely to the issue of our water supply and our water quality, which obviously is at the heart of our concerns as a water agency in the county. We submitted a comment letter on the EIR that highlighted many of the same concerns that were also highlighted in the report from Supervisor Mills. And our main concern are the adverse effects to water quality as a result of the illegal grows. And that's what most of our comments were directed at. And obviously, we didn't take a position. It's not appropriate for us to take a position either way on the decision, the ultimate decision by this board. But we simply wanted to make it clear that whatever decision is made, it's critically important that there are adequate resources to deal with the illegal grows. It certainly, I'm sure, like most people in this room, scares us to death to see the reports in the paper and by the sheriff and some of the chemicals that are being identified on the landscape within our natural water system are extremely dangerous and something we are very concerned about. At the same time, I do want to make it very clear that we do extensive ongoing water quality testing. We use an outside certified lab with the state to do that. All of that is reported to the state and reported to the public. We issue an annual water quality report as well that identifies that. And there are over 70 different constituents that we test for on an annual basis, and then dozens more that we do on a periodic basis based on our permit requirements, some at a 10-year interval. That includes a whole spectrum of things, organic compounds, inorganic matters, pesticides, herbicides, turbidity, numerous things that we test. And our testing is primarily done at the intake at our plant. So as we sit, for example, at Jenny Lynn, as we're downstream of Hogan on the river, we intake into the system, and then we test the water quality as it's going out into the system. We have met all of our permit requirements, not exceeded any of the thresholds, illegal thresholds that we have for those constituents on any of the reports in the recent past, anything that I'm aware of. We have excellent quality of water, and I want the public to know that. That does not in any way take away from the fact that we have risk posed by the illegal grows in particular, and the fact that we have constituents that are not being monitored right now, as some of these chemicals are things that are largely banned across most of the world and are not being actively monitored. So to sum up, I just want to say that working with other agencies within our county, other water districts, we will go to our contacts. We're already reaching out to them now at the State Water Board to try to find some pathway that we can gain support from the state government in particular as the administrator under the EPA to be able to gain access to additional testing, particularly upstream in the watersheds.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to allow David to go over, as he is quasi-staff with CCWD. I hope everybody understands that. You can continue.
So just to, the cost of the ongoing testing is no small matter. We spend over $160,000 a year on our lab testing that we do for water and wastewater, and obviously this could pertain to our wastewater system as well. And so we very much want to find a pathway that includes some assistance by the state and federal government, if at all possible. And I very much want to approach our RCD. I think they could be a very important partner in this as well. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any. And again, we submitted the comment letter, and I'll just let it speak for itself.
Questions of Supervisor Mills?
Thank you for coming today, Dave. Appreciate it. And you and I have had some fairly long conversations on this issue and the importance of the value of ensuring that our water supply, not only to our constituents here in Calaveras County, but to the rest of the state of California, remains as pure as possible. knowing the unknowns or having the unknowns out there are always the major concern to any water district. And I would ask that, considering the recent water board decision that was passed Wednesday regarding cannabis regulations, which exempts indoor grows from dumping wastewater into your treatment systems, is the district prepared to begin a monitoring process on what that is? And is the district capable or have the engineering in place on their on your waste treatment side to be able to properly handle this, considering it's all an unknown? It's a big question, but.
Yeah, you bet. And, I haven't reviewed that finding by the board, but obviously that's why I mentioned the wastewater as well. It's a big concern for us. And given that our systems are designed around biological nutrient removal with active organisms, that's the prime concern for us, is that if we have some spike in a nutrient or toxic chemical that would upend that system, that could take us offline for a while and cause some operational challenges for us. So that's very important, and I know water agencies across the state, wastewater agencies, are very concerned about that. Again, that's part of the same consideration as on the water side.
Thank you.
Further questions of Supervisor Garamendi?
Dave, thanks so much for coming today. I have two quick questions. Have you seen a spike in contaminants in the water over the last couple of years?
Not in anything that we test for, but again, there are things on this list that we don't directly test for. It's possible that there could be an indirect result in nitrogen or phosphorus or something else that we're testing for that could be as a result of it, but no, we haven't exceeded any of our requirements under our permits.
So no pollutions directly attributable to cannabis?
I don't have any evidence from our testing that would support that.
Thank you.
Okay. Further questions? Thank you once again for coming.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Ma'am, thank you very much for allowing that interruption in the public comments. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have our last speaker before lunch, so we'll have a chance for you to speak. Go ahead, please.
I understand that one of CCWD's directors has marijuana growing on his land, and I'm a Calaveras resident, and I do not feel that I feel that I'm being forced to be a drug pusher, because there's nothing moral about being a drug pusher, and that's what I'm forced to be, being without a ban. And with or without a ban, there's going to be illegal growers, and everybody knows that. It's just going to be the Wild West, like it has been for the last year. And I believe that we need federal help to address the situation. And by pussyfooting around about having medical marijuana or any kind of marijuana in Calaveras County is denying us the funds to deal with it. And so I appreciate you listening to me, and I would say that David Tuno and Mr. Fiorino ditto to what they said.
Okay, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be breaking for lunch. We'll continue public comment when we return at 1.